talk and rock radio where friends meet at the intersection of life, inspiration, and music. Here's your host, Rick Kern.
Welcome, everyone, to Talk and Rock Radio. My guest today is an American bassist and session musician. He rose to prominence as a member of the James Taylor backing band, which coalesced into a group called The Section. From Los Angeles, California, welcome, Leland Sklar. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. I'm really happy to be here. I'm glad we got this all sorted out and got the hang going.
Me too, man. This is so cool. I've been wanting to do this for such a long time, and I schedules and everything, and a lot of life getting in the way. But we're here, man. This is what's good.
Yeah,
Lee, I'm gonna kick this thing off with a question about how did music begin for you? How did you become passionate about music?
I first off, I was fortunate to grow up in a household that my parents' musical taste was very eclectic. They had a lot of records, and it was everything from classical to jazz to lounge to you name it. But when I was really young, probably about 5, I guess, my parents used to watch the Liberace TV show. And for those that don't know, who aren't there, Liberace basically was Elton John long before Elton John. He was really a gifted pianist, but had a real shtick about the way he performed. He would wear his tux and had big rings and a candelabra, but it was a wonderful pianist. And I would watch his TV show with them, and we had a baby grand piano in the house. And even though nobody was really a piano, it was kind of a family piano. And my mom played a little bit, but after watching Liberace, I would go over and I'd play at the piano and had an affinity for it. And my parents ended up getting me a teacher. And I mean, I don't want to say I was like the proverbial child prodigy, but I ended up winning a whole bunch of awards as a young pianist and all this. And that was really how I got into music. And I studied. I had teachers all the way up to when I went into junior high school. And went into junior high school kind of assuming I would be the pianist. And the music teacher said, look, we got 50 kids that play piano. We need a string bass player. And he pulled out an old K upright out of the back room and showed me how to hold it. And I plucked a note on it and felt that vibration. And I just told him, I said, I'll do it, and he gave me some rudimentary lessons on it. And from there on, at that point, I was kind of burned out with piano. So I really actually welcomed a change and moving over to the bass, and I'm still at it. It's 60 some years later, or 65 years later, whatever.
Still vibrating, right?
Still vibrating. got one right next to me, right
there. You go, man. With the fake switch on it, right?
That's one of the other ones.
I love that story. Lee, you've recorded with so many greats. I mean, Carole King, James Taylor, Linda Ronstadt, Phil Collins, Jackson Browne, Toto, on and on and on. And of course, Lyle Lovett, of course, you're getting ready to go on tour with him.
Yeah.
You've done over 2,000 albums, which include doing motion pictures and television show soundtracks. I'm going to ask you a question now about if you were to select one biggest moment out of all of those greats that you've worked with, even some that I haven't mentioned, what would that be?
That would be impossible, really. Because each one has its own thing. The first time I walked in the studio with James, and Jackson and Carole, I mean, they were magical moments. Yet, when I was in the studio working with Billy Cobham doing Spectrum with him, or being with Hall and Oates, or each one has its own thing. And then I spent years going to Nashville working with Vince Gill and Reba and all these people. Each one has its own unique quality about it, and to me, so for me, they're all really special. It's like, having kids and saying which one's your favorite, because I really enjoyed them all. And there's been the occasional one where you're just kind of go, get me out of here kind of a moment.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I really take everything incredibly seriously when we're in the studio. When I was in uh, Shepherd's Bush in 1984 with Phil Collins doing the No Jacket Required. I mean, I was such a fan of Phil, and to be sitting in the studio with him and working on these songs was amazing. Yet being in the studio doing Andy Griffith blew my mind. There's Andy's right next to me, and we became friends. So, it would really be impossible to pick anything. I feel very fortunate that I've traveled the journey that I've been on and have had so many good experiences. That to me is a real blessing.
Carole's early career was, of course, in New York, and I was curious. Are you when you were working with her, were you spending a lot of time in New York City?
No, only L.A.
Only L.A. Okay.
She was living in L.A. by the time we worked together, and she was with James because when James began out here, when he came out to Los Angeles to work with Peter Asher out here, they had a set band, and it was Danny Korchmar, Russ Kunkel, and Carole King. They were the band, and when it came time for him to play the troubadour, they needed a bass player for it, and I was in a band called Wolfgang. And James had, through a friend of his, had come to one of our rehearsals, and he remembered me from this rehearsal. But so that was the first time I met Carole, was working with James out here, and then when we were doing the first tour, James finally kind of pushed Carole into a corner and introduced her to the crowd and said, she's an amazing songwriter. Do some songs for them, Carole. Freaked her out because she had a profound career back in the days of the Brill Building and all that. She and her husband at the time, Jerry Goffin, wrote tons of hit songs, and she was a teenager when she was writing all these things like The Locomotion and Natural Woman. I mean, it's an amazing career that she'd had. And but nobody knew her as a solo artist. They just maybe knew Goffin and King, had no idea King was this young girl. So she ended up doing some of the songs that she had done on the tour, and the next thing you know, she got signed by Lou Adler to Ode Records and went in the studio and cut Tapestry, which became one of the biggest albums in history. So that was really my whole relationship with Carole, was all based on working with James, and it was all based out of Los Angeles.
You do a daily podcast, and I tell you, I've been following that for years. I love your stories. The episodes are just packed with great history and the music clips. What I really enjoy about the music clips is that more times than not, I'm hearing music for the first time that I've not heard before, and it's really exciting. When you're doing these episodes, and like I said, you do them daily. I think you're up to, I think the latest one that I saw was 1,213. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. After we're done, I'll be doing today's,
Wow. What inspires you with these episodes? I mean, obviously these are life experiences that you've gone through and everything, but I mean, is that where it is? You just go daily and think, okay, today I'm going to talk about Toto, is that how you do it, or?
There's no preconception every day as to what I'm going to do that day. Today is bouncing off of what I did yesterday because it was a project. There's a couple of friends of mine have a thing called Scary Pockets. And it's a real interesting thing where they just get together in the studio with whatever musicians were available for them, and they bring in an artist and they pick a song and we come up with a quirky arrangement and cut it right on the spot, all live. And so I'm going to do a couple of days of that. But the whole thing really started, number one, because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
The pandemic, as horrid a thing as it's been, and I've had a number of friends die from this, and others who are long haul and all this. So I don't downplay the severity of this nightmare that we're still going through, because we just went through this again with our group, with one of the members coming down with COVID.
Right.
He's okay now. But I kind of looked at it as, how do you make lemonade out of this lemon we've been handed? And so I ended up, because all my work, like every other player I knew, was, when this hit, it just blew out the window. Everything, your book was empty now, because every gig I had was canceled or indefinitely postponed. So we had finished just not too long before the pandemic hit. We had done Phil Collins's kind of last tour, his Not Dead Yet tour. And I had some guys writing to me going, we saw you in South America or in Germany or places like that. And we did a lot of stadium gigs. And so they were writing, saying, the show sounded amazing, but we couldn't hear some of the details on some of these songs. So what I decided to do was, and my setup here is primitive. I mean, this is like such lowball process of making this. I have a little Bose speaker next to me that I plugged into my laptop, which I'm on with you right now. I have a little bass amp here on the floor. And when I was filming myself, here, I'll show you my, this is the high-tech part of it. I do everything on my phone. So I have a selfie stick and a C clamp, and I bolt the selfie stick to the drawer in my desk here, and just aim the camera at me and kind of play around till it looks like it's probably right. And then what I did in the beginning was, what I thought I would do was play the show that we did with Phil, and mix it in such a way where I had a board mix of one of our show in Adelaide. And so what I would do is I'd play it through the speaker, but then I worked on it till I got a good balance where I played the bass parts through the amp louder than the track so they could hear, in detail. So I did the first song of the show the first day, and then the second day I did the second song. By the third day, I had people writing to me going, "Man, we love your YouTube channel." And I'm going, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Oh, no, your new YouTube channel." I didn't think that putting up a couple of videos created a channel.
Yeah.
But I went ahead and I did, the entire show. It took, I don't know how many songs we had in the show. So I got to the end. The only song I didn't do was "Take Me Home," which is how we would close the shows on most of the tours. And so what I decided to do was, that's tucked away. And when I finally get to my penultimate video and decide that I'm done with this, I'll do "Take Me Home," and just, that'll be my closer. But I got to the end of it and I kind of went, I'm really enjoying this. People seem to be enjoying it. Now what am I going to do? So I started just going through something, doing, continuing on, but did like James and Jackson and Linda and all these people. And for the most of the early videos, I was playing along with all of the tracks showing bass parts, but it's tedious, trying to recapture moments that happened in the studio 50 years ago. Because a lot of things, when I think of like Gene Clark's "No Other" album, which is a real seminal album in terms of like, people loving Gene Clark from the Byrds. There's some track, like the main track on there. I think I have 6 bass parts on it. They kind of gave me a free for all, and I kind of orchestrated that whole track with different effects and all kind of, and I thought there's no way I can sit here and duplicate that. This was some magic that happened when we were in the studio. So then I got into the space where I was telling people, look, I'm just going to be an audience along with you, and let's just go on this. And occasionally I do still play along with things, but work started back up again, and all of a sudden my time is far more constricted than it was in the beginning. So I've really enjoyed just having to. I've never thought about my career. I've always been just happy to be a working musician. So I've had to go through, find all these different websites like AllMusic and Discog and Wikipedia, finding what I've played on. Because I have no real record of all these records. It's been really a fun process, and I really, it happened unintentionally. I mean, I just, it was a real casual thing, and now there's, I think, 215,000 people on the channel, and but I just enjoy it every day. Like when I was out all summer with Lyle Lovett and his large band, and one of the things I did out there was every day I gave a tour of the venues we played. I walked from the street through the whole thing, the basements, the attic, the backstage.
Oh, cool.
Would introduce, the different players in the band, and people got to know them. And I'm getting ready to leave Sunday with Lyle again with an acoustic 4-piece group, and we'll be out for 6 weeks touring the South. And I'm going to do the same thing every day. I'll be going through all the venues, and I've done interviews with Lyle and the different guys in the band, or I talk to people that I meet at the gigs, and I'm just taking everybody on the road with me at this point.
I got news for you, Leland. It's more like 10 weeks. It's not 6 weeks. I've looked at the dates, man. You start off in the next couple of days, two gigs in Santa Fe. Number 2 gig is already sold out. And then you go to Amarillo, and then you come to El Paso. Next Thursday, you'll be here in El Paso. But I was looking to see where all you're going to be going, and you head towards Austin area and all that. You're going to be playing a real cool theater called the Barnhouse Center, and it's really a nice theater. I've done a show there with one of my favorite bands called Ronstadt Review with John Beeland, and you're going to like that room. It's a real pretty little room. But anyway, what I'm going to do on this segment of this part of the show is I'm going to do your number 88. I'm going to take a little bit of the Jackson Browne Somebody's Baby, where you're playing along with it, because I love the close-up, watching you play. This is an opportunity that we don't get to see when we watch your live videos. Yeah, we see you up there playing, but the close-up, watching you play with that music is kind of fun to watch. So I'm...
Miss the gliss.
After my eyes have seen the view, and the smoke parade of years that I've cried, now I want to understand. I have done all that I could to see the eagle
And I'm also going to do a little bit of your number 1213 with Joseph Williams with the Liberty Man. I really like that song. Of course,
I love that song. When he contacted me and said, "Could you want to play on one of the tracks on my album?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." Are you kidding? I'm going to go back and I'm going to visit a track I did with Joseph Williams from Toto on his Denison Tennant album, which was done in 2021. It was really fun. The two times I've toured with Toto, the first time back in 2007 or whatever that was, the band was Luke and myself and Simon Phillips and Greg Fillinganes on keyboards, Tony Spinner on guitar, Bobby Kimball on vocals. Boy, I hope I'm not leaving anybody. I think that was the lineup on this one. But then the second time I toured with them, it was Joe Williams was the vocalist on it, with Mavuto and Jenny were singing background. Steve Picaro and David Page were on it. Shannon Forrest on drums. Lenny Castro on percussion. Me and Luke. And so it was really great. I got to see two very different incarnations of Toto. And I so enjoyed both of them. And they were all, I mean, the one thing, it's always a collection of great musicians. And people get to hear those songs. So it's really cool. But it was really fun working with Joe. I've known Joe a long time. So when he called me and asked me to play on this track on his album, I said, no, I'd love to. But it was still COVID time. So what he did was he sent me the track minus bass, just with what he had on it at that time. And I went over to my dear friend John Gilliton's house. He has a home studio, and we sat there, and I just brought my Dingwall with me, and we went ahead and did the bass part for this track over there. Now, on the finished track, it's myself on bass, Simon Phillips on drums, Mike Landau and Steve Lukather on guitar. Joe's playing keyboards on this and vocals, and it was written by David Page and Joe Williams, and it's called Liberty Man. So I thought I'd just play that one today. It's a beautiful track, and it was really fun. They gave me a little interlude in the middle of this, kind of in the bridge section, to just do some bass stuff on it. He had some stuff sketched out on a keyboard that I just kind of blew that off and did it in my way. I didn't do my way, I did it my way. Got to be careful with song titles here. So let's go ahead and as one would say, écoutez this track and see what we got going on here.
My heart singing a song. You are the words and the melody. It's calling me out where I really belong, down to the edge of the sea. You could say I'm a romantic fool, wants to be an adventurer, and I'll follow that song to the edge of the world. I'll do anything to get to her. I am a man who has to be free, to put up the anchor and sail out to sea, to ride the beckoning waves and follow the stars. I still believe you and I can go on, sailing the world we've been building upon. I'm gonna search for a land where love is a fleeting away. Seems to me life's a river of dreams that goes on and on to infinity. But you have to watch out for the occasional fall. It's the speed of
And so he sent me that, but it was still kind of COVID time, and uh, I was venturing over on occasion to a friend of mine, John Gilliton, who's a great keyboard player. He played with James and Ronstadt, and so he has a really good home studio. So we just sent the stems there, and we both sat in our masks across the room from each other in his studio, and I did the bass part there, and then shipped it off to Joseph. But yeah, I really love that track. It's really yeah, those. I mean, that's the thing when you get like he and Paige writing together. Just their concepts and their adventurous musicality is something pretty special. And I've
That
always been a huge fan of Toto.
that whole experience that I had with Toto indirectly, I was kind of connected with them through Howard Steele and Richard Perry. My
Hmm.
band was out in L.A. at the time, and this is going to be in '77 with my last group called Tapestry. Nothing to do with Carol. We just a name that we came up with, and we thought, yeah, we like that because we're kind of weaving different kind of sounds and music and stuff that we're doing in our shows. But anyway, that whole experience with Howard Steele, he's from El Paso, he's a friend of mine. But that group Toto was discovered in his garage studio right at the time that he and Richard Perry had partnered and started Studio 55 there in L.A. So
Yeah.
he invited Sharon and I, my wife and I, to go and watch Porcaro lay down a track for Diana Ross for one of her albums. And that was a magical moment, just sitting in that control room with Richard and Howard and watching them do their magic.
Yeah.
And of course, watching Jeff, he was just one of the biggest monsters there ever was, man. I just loved his playing,
I miss him so much.
I bet you do. I miss watching him on YouTube and stuff. And then, of course, that day he was just crazy good. But anyway, we can talk about that forever. But I want to get back into a recent project that you're working on, and of course, the band. Immediate family. I tell you what, man, you have the finest group ever. And of course, that group morphed, out of the Section, the group called Section, and of course you've added a great guitar player that in fact I just got through doing Steve Postel's episode a couple days ago. In fact, it aired today. It's 8 o'clock this morning, so
Oh, cool.
people can tune in and see what I did with Steve a couple of days ago. It came out really nice. I'm really proud of that particular episode. But anyway, I want you to talk a little bit about immediate family, Lee, and talk about the music documentary. That's pretty exciting. I've done one with Denny Tedesco, and that'll be aired on I think February 10th is when that one comes out. I think that's what that is. Whatever Friday is in February, around the 10th.
Okay, cool.
But of course, Denny Tedesco produced your documentary that's going to be out this year. Probably, I think the target's around June that we're hoping to see it. It's at film festivals right now, but talk a little bit about the band and doing that documentary.
Well, the band came about. I mean, first off, back to the Section. The Section was Danny Korchmar, Russ Kunkel, myself, and Craig Durgee on keyboards. We did 3 albums, 2 for Warner Brothers and 1 for Capitol in the '70s, and we would open like James Taylor and Jackson Browne's shows. Doing what we did was instrumental rock fusion, and by the time the '70s was closing out, we had added David Lindley to the group, not officially, but he was playing gigs with us. And we kind of just called it at that point. I mean, we had cult status, but nothing was really happening in terms of record sales or anything like that. So we all went our separate ways in terms of the band, but we were always together on projects and still working with James and, in different incarnations. And during that whole period, when we were doing James, and projects like that. That's when Waddy Wachtel came into the picture too. So we were all this unit that worked together. Then flip the clock a few decades. Cooch, Danny Korchmar got offered a solo record deal with a label called Vivid Records in Japan. And they wanted him just to, he has such a wealth of material that he's done over the years. He co-wrote and wrote songs for Don Henley, for James, for all kinds of people. He produced Billy Joel and Bon Jovi and all these people. So he got offered this deal to maybe revisit some of his material on it. And on a whim, because he figured we probably weren't around, because it was at that time of year, he called Russ and I to see if we would be available to work with him on it. And it turns out we were in town that week. It was only going to be 4 days to do the album. So Jackson Browne let us use his studio in Santa Monica to record. Now, Cooch had been living back east and at this point had moved back out to Los Angeles. And he lived right near Steve Postel. And they met up, I believe, at a party and started talking. And then there was some guitars there and they started playing and they hit it off immediately. And so when it came time to be doing this, Cooch spent a bunch of time with Steve doing pre-production with him in his studio at his house. And the only one who wasn't available was Waddy to do it because he was on the road with Stevie Nicks. He's been Stevie Nicks's musical director and go-to guy on everything she's ever done. And but he was going to be in town for the last day of recording, so we were cutting. So we went into Jackson's studio with Steve and Cooch and Russ and myself, and did most of these tracks. And then Waddy joined us at the end. Well, when it was over, he turned in the album, and the label said, "Well, what should we call it? It's Danny Korchmar, but you've got all these guys on it." And it was Danny who came up with, he said, "Look, these guys are my immediate family, so let's just call it Immediate Family." So that was the first album that we did together, was Danny Korchmar and the Immediate Family. And then we went to Japan and toured it. And we had so much fun doing it. We said, well, we should just keep this up. Let's just keep going. And the label was excited about it over in Japan too. So we just, as the next leg of it started, we just dropped the Danny Korchmar and it just became the Immediate Family. And then we signed a deal with a label called Quarto Valley Records out here in Los Angeles. And so that's our main label, but we still have the Japan arrangement is between Quarto and the label in Japan. Now, and then like we got a new album in the can of all original. Like after we finished doing all these, because Cooch would joke with people when we would do gigs. He says we're a cover band that only plays originals, which was really true because people recognized so many of the songs, but they recognized them because of other artists and didn't realize that this was where it all emanated from.
You ever heard of us? Well, you're gonna.
So I guess I'm responsible for starting Immediate Family. We love playing together, we're writing songs together, and we're just having the best time. And it's just an incredible honor and a joy to play with my best friends, my family.
She wants a party, want to get down. Hey, all she wants to do is down.
We're a cover band that does originals. As we wrote them, we played on them, we produced them. None of this stuff is just, from nowhere, man. This is all stuff that we have been a part of.
It's so hard to put into words what these guys mean. These are the cats, these are the main guys that played on so many records.
She's got to be somebody's babe, 'cause she's so fine. She's probably somebody's only light, gonna shine tonight, yeah.
Cooch wrote it. I didn't write it. Cooch wrote it.
50 years ago, this was all brown and not white. 50 years later, I'm still with Russ and Waddy and Cooch. And then we've added that little whippersnapper, Steve Postel.
I get to be the young guy. It's been a long time. I've been the old guy for years. I get to play with four of the best musicians who've ever played rock and roll, ever.
If someone told me 20 years ago that I would be in this band, the Immediate Family, I would have told them they were out of their mind.
Slipping and sliding again. Yeah, I'm slipping and sliding again.
I'm thrilled that they've come together and performing in this way. After so many years being the backbone of everybody else's record and everybody else's show, that these guys are coming together and presenting as a band. It's a gift to us all.
Yes, I'm slipping and sliding again. Why am I slipping and sliding again? So don't ask me, just ask the devil, man.
So we've got this. We finished a new album and everything. We finished it about 6 months ago, and we're just waiting for the right opportunity to release it because things are still so squirrely in this business right now with COVID, and it certainly is not gone. There are still tours being canceled because of COVID. We were out all summer on the summer tour with Lyle and his large band. It's 15 guys in the band, and at one point we were down 9 members because of it. So, don't treat this lightly at all. It's not over. But like 3 years ago now, Denny Tedesco, who did the Wrecking Crew movie about the great studio musicians of LA back in the late 50s into the till about 70. A few of who are still working, and they're not gone, but they're getting old. But it was Hal Blaine and Carole King and Mike Melvoin, all these amazing players. He was approached about doing a documentary, and the original thing that they had been discussing was a different project, but it was kind of tanking. It wasn't going the way they wanted, and they were, kicking around ideas about what should we regroup and do this. And the great Lisa Roy, who's no longer with us, was a staple in the LA music scene. She was a remarkable woman, just kind of one of these people that got shit done, But she pitched the idea of doing the Immediate Family, coming from the section and our history. And Denny jumped all over it. And we talked about it. And he said, look at, the Wrecking Crew was really in its heyday was about 10 to 12 years that they really were the working guys and gals. And but they never left the studio. They did the People's Records, and when the Association and the Mamas and Papas and all these people whose records they did went out to work, they would put a band together for those people. But those guys never did it. They were in the studio, and they never wrote or produced any of these people. They were the players. And Denny said, the real difference is that he said, you guys have been together for 52 years. You're still at it. You've written songs for them, produced for them, toured with all these artists. So he said it's a very different thing. So he didn't feel he was making Wrecking Crew 2. Right. There's a certain connection that's there, but it's not like we're another decade of what those guys did. This is a different thing, and it's a remarkable film. I mean, it freaks. I've seen it maybe 8 times now, because I've done a bunch of the film festivals and done the Q&As with them, and kind of sitting and watching your life laid out on a table. It's weird. It's a really strange experience, but he's done a really beautiful job on this film, and it's won audience favorite awards at a bunch of the film festivals, and there's a bunch of festivals yet to come. but they're getting interest in it. So at some point there will be a buyer, and then that'll determine how it's going to be released, if it's theatrical or Netflix or Amazon or whatever. I have no idea.
I've been working with Denny a little bit about trying to get him into a local festival that we have here in El Paso. In fact, it's the United States' largest independent film festival.
Oh,
and
great.
And it's in June, and so I'm already talking to the director of it right now, and I've already turned him on to Denny, and they've already been sharing some dialogue. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We may see immediate family, some of the members of the group coming. It would be his goal to have some of you guys here with him to be able to maybe do a roundtable, discussion and then show the film.
Yeah, well, that's been really one of the fun parts is they show the film and then we go up and do Q&A with the audience.
Yeah, that's great.
It's really great, and there's a bunch more of these festivals coming up, and I know like the Doc New York City is the biggest documentary festival apparently there is, and it went on for I don't know how long. It was tons and tons of films, and there was no order to it, but we ended up in the top 10 at the festival. So the response has been really good, and it's gaining legs the more it's shown and people talk about it. So. It's one of these things that's interesting. People have talked to me over the years about legacy, and to me, the only thing I've ever thought about is, if I've played on something that long after I'm gone, people are still listening to and enjoying, that's the legacy. But this movie now takes that to another level, where there's actually this documented whole thing about all our history, how we all got into this business, how we met, and stuff. So it's I've only thought about working and playing, it's things beyond that really were never in my radar. So it's interesting to see all these things happening, and we'll see what happens. It's out of my control. So.
What I really love about all of this, and you alluded to it a little bit, was the fact that you guys were more than just session players. I'm talking about section now. You guys were behind the artist in their music, cutting records, but then you would turn right around and go out with James or Carole and tour with them.
Yeah.
And I thought, that was unthinkable. That didn't happen during the Wrecking Crew days and all that. It would always be a different band that would be the band that would go out and perform with the artist. But you guys did it all. You were the whole package.
Yeah. Well, that was the uniqueness, and that was really, like I said, the hook that made Denny excited about doing this film. It was a very different story. But that was the real, to me, if somebody told me I had to make a choice, I could either be a studio musician or a touring musician, I would pick touring every time.
Yeah.
It's arduous, it's hard on the family. There's a lot of stuff that comes with it that you might look at as somewhat of a negative, but the thing of walking out on a stage and playing music for people, and I don't care if it's a club with 50 people or a stadium with 80,000 people in it, it's the same energy to me, and I love it. So when I started as a studio musician, which happened like instantly when we started with James, and he suddenly was the biggest thing in the music business. All of a sudden we went from having no studio experience to being in demand on a daily basis, which was an adventure unto itself. I was coming to it as like the other guys. We were coming out of bands. All we really ever did was play live and play clubs and fraternity parties and birthdays and you name it. So when I was in the band Wolfgang, we were managed by Bill Graham, and that's why we called the band Wolfgang, because that was Bill Graham's real name was Wolfgang. And the first time we ever walked out on a stage together as a band and played for an audience was opening for Led Zeppelin in Winterland.
Wow.
It's just, it's been crazy the whole time. But I love live. I'm still a band guy at heart, and whenever an opportunity for a tour comes along, I'm all over it. And if you're smart about it, I stay in touch with all the people I do recording with, And there's times where they say, I got a project coming up, and I go, I'm on the road. I can't do it. They go,
Yeah.
well, when do you get home? We're flexible, and they'll wait, or they'll, send me files on the road. I'm going to be doing an album for a guy while I'm out with Lyle now. I'm taking my stuff with me because they want me to do bass on like 8 songs on their album, and so I'll do it while I'm sitting in a hotel room.
Let me ask you about adding Steve Postel to the group, Leland. How has that impacted the group? I mean, he is so darn good. Tell me, you had this core group called the Section, and then you bring in, Steve to the mix. What has that done to the group, and what talk about that dynamic part of it?
Well, also, I mean, we have Waddy, who was not in the Section.
Oh, that's right.
And the Section had Craig, but we don't have a keyboard player in the immediate family. It's a guitar-driven band.
Right.
And the thing that really works so well is you try to imagine 3 guitar players in a band, and it turns into like a pose off at a bodybuilding contest where they're all shoving each other out of the way, trying to get all the attention. The thing that's really fortunate is Waddy, Cooch, and Steve all play so differently that each of them has their own thing that they do. So there isn't this conflict. When we're working on stuff, there's discussions about placement and all that, but each guy is very unique to it. So, it's like in the documentary, Keith Richards talks about that because Waddy and Keith were in his band, the Expensive Winos, and Keith talks about the group, and he goes, trying to imagine 3 guitar players in a band, but he says these guys pull it off. I mean, there's no stuff going on. Plus, Steve has really a great high tenor voice, so having him vocally in it makes a big thing too. The thing that was probably a little bit difficult was because he's a good 10 years younger than all the other guys in the group. So we've had these different careers going on. So for him, it was trying to sort out for the film how to make it work when you're talking the immediate family, where the focus on the film is really about the 4 of us with Waddy, Cooch, me, and Russ. But as things evolve to where the movie is now with the immediate family, he's an integral part of it too. So his career is addressed in it, but not with the lineage that they really use as the hook going back to the Section. So,
Sure.
But it's all worked out. It's all worked out really well.
It's so interesting, Leland, hearing you talk about the 3 guitars, because my interview with Steve came out today, and I would encourage everybody to watch it. We talk about the 3 guitars. In fact, I brought up the fact that the 3 guitars play so well together. Each guy, the chemistry, they know when to pull back, when to, they just know, and that's just a sign of a well-tuned band that really knows what they're doing chemistry-wise and everything. But and then he even made reference to the fact that Keith Richards had talked about that, in his documentary.
I look at Cooch and Waddy have been playing off of each other now since the 70s, so they really know each other inside out. And Steve just became kind of this seamless addition to that. Like he could hear what those guys were doing, and his space was defined just by the nature of what those guys did. And so it really works well. I mean, it can be I did a project. It was a Christmas concert, but it was really funny. There was DJs in Los Angeles called Mark and Brian. They had a really huge radio show, and they would do a Christmas show every year, a live concert. And so on one of the last ones we did, Jason Bonham was playing drums in the band, and we decided to do Black Dog. But the musical director for the band was Mark Bonilla, who's a great, great guitar player. So we also had Slash and Lukather on it. And so we played Black Dog. And at the end of it, I looked at Bonilla and I said, this is why Zeppelin had one guitar player. I mean, they all played great, but they were all playing kind of the same stuff.
Yeah.
But that's where we're really lucky is these three guys in our group really have defined spaces and they complement each other rather than, it's like having too many singers, background singers that are doubling each other. And suddenly it sounds smaller than it did if it was just one of them singing that part.
I haven't followed Toto lately. Is Lukather still playing with them?
Oh, it wouldn't be Toto if Luke wasn't there.
Yeah.
They were just out there, they had a new incarnation of it. I did the two tours I did with them, the bands were totally different on each tour. And they're different again, but Luke is, he's also going out with Ringo doing the All-Star.
Right.
So he's always got different things going on, but the new incarnation of it, if Lukather wasn't there, then it wouldn't exist.
The guitar player in my last band is the music director at Harrah's in San Diego, and that's one of the acts that they have had not too long ago was Ringo's All-Star Band, and he said that whole experience working with Ringo was great because he was taking him around the property and everything, and they had several opportunities to talk and stuff. So Danny had a good time with him.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Yeah, I can only imagine, man. It just he'd be fun to get to know. One of the videos that I'm going to play is your New York Minute. I love that. And in fact, when I did the episode with Steve, we talked about how Carole King had mentioned to Steve how much she likes his voice on New York Minute. So I thought we would play that in this episode. But really like the video work on that, though. How I don't know who your videographer, the videographer was on this one, but boy, they did some really cool stuff with putting the images in the buildings and everything. That was nice.
I thought it was really the guy who does our videos has done all the videos for us, and because the thing that's great, he's really amazing, and like we have like. I mean, the thing that's funny with the group is here we talk about our history, that, playing on between all of us. I mean, we are talking thousands and thousands and thousands of records and hundreds of millions of sales, yet we're a new band. We were thinking it would be funny at the Grammys if we were nominated as Best New Artist.
The best new old artist.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, being a new group too, like we have no budget. So, I mean, it's amazing the videos we've been able to pull off considering we are like completely, low ball in terms of the amount of money that's available to be spent on things and stuff. But he does a really beautiful job. And yeah, when I first saw that one, I just went, oh, that's just great having all the imagery on the buildings and
yeah,
really smart stuff.
The other one that's interesting is Somebody's Baby. Now, was that all done individually where you guys were at each one of your studios?
Yeah, well, two of the guys, well, three. Waddy has a studio and Postel has a studio. I've never had a studio. Russ has a little setup, I think, at his place. And I think Cooch goes over to Postel's house. I think he's got just enough to record. But we used that. That was really in the height of COVID. And so we were not getting together at all. And so there's that app called Acapella. And where like one guy puts down his part and then he sends it to the next guy, and then you add your part. You can figure out what square you're in and all that stuff. And we did a whole bunch of stuff in that way, and it works pretty seamlessly. If you know what you're doing with it. I did the same thing with Judith Owen, who I work with. Where we did a bunch of videos with her during that period too, and it was all done in the same way. So we didn't want to stop. I mean, so many people ground to a halt during those first 2 years of COVID, and we just kept on writing and recording and going at it. So because what else are you going to do? Just sit around the house being bummed that everything's not happening. Well, then you make it happen. That's where, for me, that was, the channel doing the book that I did. I just looked at it as an opportunity to do things that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do because of other work.
Sure. Yeah. Laying in bed this morning, I was thinking about different questions I was going to ask you today. And one of them that came to mind was I was thinking about back in the older days when you were working with James and you would go out on tour. Talk a little bit about what has happened contract writer-wise between that period of time and what it is like right now working with Lyle. Are the writers, have they changed that much, as far as what the demands are that you all get, taking care of the sidemen, rooms, food, stuff like that? I was just curious about how much of that is has improved through the years versus what it used to be when you would go out on a tour in one of those buses versus the buses that you're in today.
Honestly, it really hasn't changed much at all.
Okay.
They always, the tour always took care of your travel, your airfare, getting to wherever you're starting. They would have the hotel rooms and per diem, and then you would figure out what you wanted to do. If you're a breakfast person, you were responsible for your breakfast unless the hotel was giving you breakfast. I think one thing I've noticed less of certainly was probably. I never, I got through this whole business up to this point. I never drank, never did drugs or any of it, never smoked. But in the old days, I would say there was probably more alcohol on the riders in backstage than I see now. Now I see like some maybe some red and white wine, where back then it was whiskey and vodka and all that.
My wife and I have done been part of a couple of concerts here in town. One was Willie and one was Emmy Lou, and there was a friend of ours who was doing the food for the shows. It was at the Haskins Center here at the university in El Paso here, and I remember on their rider, I think it was on Emmy Lou's, that she had to have poulet foussé. It had to be a special kind, and not just that, but certain size bottles, and
And
just,
some people get into that, like the famous old stuff about, like, I think it was Van Halen didn't want like brown M&Ms or.
I know that's been an ongoing story forever.
But no, for the most part, at least the stuff I've been involved with, I'm never involved in the backstage writer. I have no idea, who takes care of that and what the artists might be asking for. I'm sure some of the artists might have certain things. I know one of the things, like when we were out with Phil Collins, one of the things we asked for, I don't know if it was we were fortunate that a tour like that, you're carrying your own caterers for the whole tour.
Okay.
So they're when the gear's being unloaded from the truck, their ovens and refrigerators are also being unloaded. I mean, it's a traveling city when you're doing a tour like that. And we had them, we always had fresh fruit and vegetables and juicers in the dressing room, so you could make yourself a smoothie or something like that, which I would make one every night. I had a thermos with me, and I would have it and take that after the show and have that for breakfast in the morning. And but for the most part, the backstage is usually pretty simple on most of the tours I've done with Lyle. It's pretty basic stuff back there. And we travel. I mean, there's times when we don't have hotels, where we're just on the bus for days, sleeping on the bus, and you kind of clean up at the gig and stuff. It's not
That's what I was going to ask you about, Lee. On this tour with Lyle, it's the acoustic tour, so you're going to have what, 4 or 5 guys?
Yeah, there's four in the band and Lyle, so there's 5 altogether.
Yeah. So on that bus, do you have a separate bus that the roadies ride in, or is it okay?
There'll be a crew bus and a band bus.
Okay.
Two
And
buses.
then on your bus, do you all have like separate sleeping rooms? Are
No,
they?
it's just bunks.
Oh, it's bunks. Okay.
It's just like if there's a small. Sorry, that's the phone ringing here.
I was going to say maybe that's Phil Collins. You might want to answer it.
No, if it's you're more important. It's one of those things that hold on. So it's like if there's like an extra bunk, we call it the junk bunk, and you just throw your like instrument or something like that. And we'll have I don't know what kind of a stage setup, because now we have Jim Cox playing piano on it, so. We'll probably, we'll be carrying a piano on the tour, so it'll require a little bit bigger setup. So I have no idea. I won't know till I get to the first gig on Monday what we actually have. They came 2 days ago and picked my bass gear up, and they're just trucking it to Santa Fe. And,
what do you put it all in a trunk and they just take it?
Yeah, they just come pick the trunk up, and then they just haul that off. And
yeah,
it's all pretty. I mean, none of that stuff's really changed over the years. It's the process. I mean, some things are huge. Like when we would go out with Phil, it would be a massive production. So we might have like 15 semis of gear. Or more, and maybe at least a dozen buses and a private plane and all that stuff.
That's the way it was with the Stones. Of course, they had two or three setups like that. Right when they finish one, another one's already set up in another city, and they just fly to it.
Yeah,
but it's amazing.
We had the same with Phil, where it was pretty much we had multiple rigs. So like there would be, like if we played in the States. There would be, but we were going to be going to Europe, then they would have one in Europe. So the one in the States, after we finish in the States, would head to Asia, so that it was there when we got there. So we would go to Europe and do the Europe thing, and then they would send back, the European one back to the States, because we'd probably do a second U.S. tour and all that. So it's the logistics of it can be really complicated, but the guys who are in charge of that stuff, I know when we rehearsed with Phil, we would rehearse for a month. We would get like an arena, or some of the tours we did like at Bray or Shepperton Film Studios, and get a soundstage. Well, once the rehearsals really got going, towards the end of the rehearsals, every day the crew would tear down the whole show and load it in trucks, and then unload it and set it back up again, because they had to rehearse that. And they had it all worked out on computers, how what the first gear that has to be out is the last gear to go in. And usually on one of the trucks, that's the kitchens for the caterers. I mean, it's the way the things they think about are stuff. We're just thinking about songs, and
Oh,
they're
right.
thinking
Yeah.
about so much other stuff, because you're carrying staging and sound and lights, and it's a literally, I mean, you might have 100 or more crew members out there on the road. So it can be pretty massive. Or you get like the immediate family, and we're kind of geeking our own gear, and renting backline when we get back
When you
east,
get there, yeah.
because we don't have the budget for shipping all of our stuff back.
Yeah. On this acoustic tour with Lyle, food wise, have you heard of how that's going to be handled yet, or are you going to have it catered, or do you know yet?
Well, it'll be local catering at every gig.
Oh, okay.
Just hire somebody. And the thing that the one thing I notice now more so than there ever was in the past is they find out, like, because I haven't eaten meat in years, so they'll have a vegetarian part of the menu too. So it's not just steak and potatoes at every gig. They'll do like a meat and fish and then a veggie thing.
Yeah.
So this will be easy with Lyle and the large band. It's more complicated because there's 15 guys in the band instead of 4.
Right.
So the logistics of the hotels and travel, and there's 3 buses for the band at that point.
Yeah.
Lyle would have his own bus, and then there would be a rhythm section bus, and then another bus with the horns and background singers and all that. So
I just thought of something that definitely has changed since the first time you went out on the road with an all-star group or whatever in touring, as well. When I was on the road, we didn't have cell phones those days, so now you definitely have better communications and a reach out to the world when you need to, or have a problem or whatever. So that's pretty good.
Well,
I tell you what,
you also have internet on the buses now.
yeah, that's cool.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll tell you, man, there was long drives of like just sitting there, watching Betamaxes and stuff. on the
Wow.
bus. I mean, you can sit there now and still take care of things you need to get done. Sometimes it gets iffy in terms of you can get into a pretty spotty area where the internet isn't working well. But for the most part, it's really a blessing having that, being able to take care of emails and communicating with people and working on stuff while you're traveling.
You know what would really be cool, just a thought here that we maybe could think about doing is, while you're out on your tour, us getting together again on your internet there on the bus, and you can do a little mini tour of inside the bus. I'd just be curious to see what it looks like in there,
Sure.
and the bunks and all that. That'd be kind of fun,
Yeah, absolutely.
And
let's do that for sure.
yeah, that'd be neat. Well, my friend, we've been gabbing for a while here. It's been so much fun, and I want to just ask you, I know you've got a project that you're going to be working on while you're touring. Anything else around the corner? Any other projects that you've got that you're going to be working on besides the Lyle tour?
Well, right now that's the main focus, that and the immediate family. So,
Yeah.
I mean, things keep coming in. It's not quite the same world it used to be, where your book would be booked up for months in advance. But I know that I'll be doing this tour with Lyle. Then we've got some gigs, I think, in Austin, 3 days in Austin in April. And then we'll be out for the summer with the large band again. So that's going to take up a chunk of my time just doing that. And then I've got just a personal trip overseas towards the end of the year. But the spaces in between tend to get filled up. I mean, it's a drag going out with this. I normally do the the pre-Grammy concert, which is a fantastic show that happens all day before the Grammys happen. And they give out about 80 awards, and we have like 80 pieces of music to do for that show. And it's like the first week of February. So I can't do it because I'll be out with Lyle. So that's the stuff that drives me crazy, is when there's stuff I would really like to be doing, but I'm already booked for something else.
Yeah.
I'm going to miss that and the guys on that tour, but I mean, on that show. But it you know, just I take every day. It's a day at a time. You never know.
For sure. Well, I just want to say, man, before we wrap this show up, Lee, this has been a real honor and a whole bunch of fun to visit with you this morning. I want to thank you for sharing your dedication and passion for what you do, man. You keep the memories alive with your daily podcast. What you do is really contagious. You know, I appreciate all the effort that it takes to put in these episodes that you do. I know because I do it myself. I'm only doing it once a week, and you're doing it every day. So I don't know how you stay married, man. You know, I don't know how. Your wife must really love you, man.
Patience of a saint.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You're going to be here next Thursday in El Paso playing at the Abraham Chavez. You're going to like the theater. It's one of our older ones there. It's at the Civic Center. The venue will be a good one for you. I was going to say, when you get to town, if you find yourself having any time, you know, where we can hang, let me know, man. Give me a shout. We'll go get some coffee or tea or something, you know, and there's a couple places right there near where you're going to be playing, right downtown. I'm assuming they'll park the bus right there near the venue, and so we can walk within a block or two there. But if you want to get together, let me know, man. I'll come down there and we'll talk in person. It'd be a real treat for me to meet you in person, man.
Well, we'll see what happens next week once I know what's going on. It's like,
okay,
I'm real curious just to get to Santa Fe and see what Lyle's plans are.
But that's going to be a fun gig up there. You know, have you been to Santa Fe before?
Oh, yeah.
We love Santa Fe. I mean, it's only about a 4.5, 5 hour drive from El Paso, but we love it up there, and we've always enjoyed staying there at some of the bed and breakfasts and everything. But I was surprised when I saw that you're going to be there for 2 nights.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I still have not seen a tour schedule yet, so I have. It'll be interesting to get out there and then find out where we're going.
Yeah, you can go on the internet, Leland. It's all there, man.
I'd rather. I don't trust anything on the internet. I'd rather have the tour manager tell me what we're doing.
You're smart. You're smart. Yeah, for sure. Well, my friend, this has been an absolute blast. Thank you for taking a little bit of time with me and being on the show. And I definitely want to do one again later with Cooch and the guys, you know.
We'll make that work. And I'm just going to say, I really love looking behind you. It looks like you have a great wall of adventures behind you.
You know, I got these 2 machines here too that are really vintage.
I love it.
But I tell you, across from me, I've got about 130 reel-to-reels that were all done back in the 60s, you know, with different bands and stuff I was in. But yeah, it's kind of my little cave here that I enjoy, and you know, got a little mixer over here, and you know, stuff. Great. But yeah, these are all bands that, well, mainly my 3 bands that I had on the road from 73 to 78, and we played. One, you would appreciate this. We played one at the Sahara Lake Tahoe in 1974 when Elvis was there, and we were supposed to be there 1 week, and they held us over for 6. So I guess we were doing something right.
That's great.
So, but anyway, Lee, I thank you again, my friend, and let's definitely stay in touch, man. You're my brother from. Week. You're definitely a brother from a different mother. There's no doubt about that. We could talk forever, man. You know.
Well, we will talk next week.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. Be careful, and we'll talk to you soon, my friend. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.